Tim, great to be with you on this Monday afternoon and great to visit with our friend Ben Ingram. What a weekend he had. He's all duded up, about to get on a plane as the Braves head to Houston for Game 1 of the World Series. Congratulations, man. I know from like a career moment standpoint, that had to be really, really cool for you on Saturday.
Yeah, it was definitely the top of the mountain for me. And hopefully we get to top that here in a few days with the World Series. But the thing about these games, you could be the best broadcaster in the world, but you have nothing to do with what happens on the field. So just getting an opportunity to call games of this magnitude is just enormous, and getting to call a clincher against the defending champions and put this team in the World Series for the first time since 1999 was just about as good as you could possibly imagine.
You know, it's funny, Ben. I thought the narrative of the whole Atlanta sports fan kind of crept in after Game 5 didn't go. The Braves went up 3-1, and you lose one, and people are like, here we go again. But that wasn't the case, and that doesn't seem to creep into this clubhouse.
I don't think so. It feels different. I know it feels different from what they experienced last season, and I know for our entire country as a whole, everything feels different in 2021 compared to what we experienced in 2020. But that's definitely the case with this ball club. I feel like this team learned from where they fell short last year. I feel like that they have they're much more equipped to achieve their goals this season than they were last year, especially on the mound. So they were able to roll right through all that. And I know that when they were up 3-1, and the way that they lost that Game 5, just getting blown out, it had to bring some lingering doubts from what you experienced last season when they blew a 3-1 lead. But they knew they were coming back home. And I think having that Game 6 and 7, if necessary, at home was huge for this team. And what I saw for Game 6 in this stadium was unlike anything I'd ever seen in this stadium. I mean, This place was rowdy, and they were in it, man. And I think they had a huge part in presenting the home field advantage that the team was looking for.
All right, so you talk about the home field advantage. Saturday, for much of the country, was a college football Saturday. Did it have kind of a big game college football atmosphere feel? Does that make sense? Is that a fair comparison?
Sure. I think so, because I think when it comes to college football, to me, it's not just what takes place in the stadium. It's the anticipation leading up to the game, because it's the only game of the week. You've had all week long to think about that upcoming game.
Yeah.
So when Saturday finally arrives, and you're going through your tailgate and you're thinking about the game, there's so much built up anticipation going into a college football game. I feel like that was the case with this, because the team lost Game 5 and you had 48 hours to think about it. What are you going to see? How are they going to respond? And this was a late first pitch. This was an 8:00 Eastern first pitch. So folks were out of the battery for hours. I mean, just partying all day. And then they filed into the ballpark and they were so loud. So I think it's a really good comparison, because it had that same nervous energy, I feel.
This story for this Braves team is pretty remarkable, given the injuries. You know, a guy that you expected to be, if not leading the rotation, certainly a big part of the rotation, and then key players with injuries that knocked them out either for the entire year or significant periods of time. How much does that, in your mind, factor in, and why has it worked for Atlanta this year?
Well, it is an amazing story, because you've had so many things take place that you thought would derail you. You'd think you can't lose the most dynamic young player in the game in Ronald Acuna. You'd think that you couldn't lose one of your aces in Mike Soroka, or your catcher for 3 months in Travis d'Arnaud, or your best pitcher at the time, your hottest pitcher at the time in Huascar Noah for 3.5, 4 months. So many injuries along the way. The issue with Marcell Ozuna, the domestic disturbance. It was just a season that in the first 4 months, you kept wondering what's going to happen next. This team went into spring training feeling like they could pick up where they left off last year, one win short of the World Series, and take it a step further. And while they've done that, it didn't happen the way that you thought that it would. And to me, that's why this is an amazing story. Folks have really doubted this team, understandably so, because for the first 4 months, this team wasn't even over 500. They didn't get over 500 until game number 111, I think, of the season. It was the second week of August before they even climbed over 500. It's a long time to tread water. But I look at what they've done in the final 2 months of the season since the trade deadline. And they have the best record in baseball since the trade deadline. So you could look at the Dodgers and the Giants and see 106 wins for one, 107 for the other, and look at the 88 wins for the Braves and say, well, they're no match for these two teams. But what happened, Richard, in April and May and June and July, that doesn't mean anything right now. what this team became over the last 2 months of the season was every bit as good as those teams were. And that's what matters. And they were fortunately in a division where they didn't get buried by the Mets or the Phillies or the Nationals or the Marlins, and took advantage of that. So I knew that they needed to make some big moves at the trade deadline. And I said on our podcast a week before the trade deadline, I said, in order to make this thing happen, I think they need no fewer than 4 trades to pull off. And even if you're able to make 4 trades, and that's a lot at the deadline, and to be quite honest, I thought that was unheard of. But to make that many trades and have them all hit and turn your team around, that seems so far-fetched. And they're able to go get Eddie Rosario, who turns into the NLCS MVP. They got Richard Rodriguez that helped steady their bullpen. Able to get Adam Duvall, who led the league in RBIs. Able to get Jock Peterson at a time where they were just depleted in the outfield. So all these moves happen and they all hit at the same time. And I think that's the most remarkable thing, is how unpredictable this all was and what they went from to what they became. And now they're in the World Series. Pretty amazing.
Ben Ingram joining us on the Farm Bureau phone line. And if you're watching on supertalktv.com, as he gets set to jump on a plane and head to Houston for game 1 of the World Series tomorrow. Yeah, there are people that say the regular season, which is so different than any other sport, it's just too long. 162 is just too many. And yet there's a rhythm and a routine and almost a cadence to the regular season of baseball. And for what you were talking about with the Braves this year, it's a good thing that it wasn't 148 or 152 or whatever the number is that people think, okay, this is the magic number that would make baseball better if the regular season wasn't so long. Certainly 162 worked well for Atlanta.
Yeah, it really did. And without that, I don't know that they're necessarily here. That's the beauty of what we do. It is such a long grind. And I think that when you get down to spring training and you start a season, you're just coming off a football season. So your mind is of the narrative. Your mind is from the place that losing a game can derail you. A bad start can derail you. Yeah. And it's different football to baseball. Baseball is so long where, look, if you're 20 games under 500 in April, yeah, you're pretty much sunk. But for the most part, this side of a complete disaster, there's so much time to get right. There's so much time to figure things out. Look at the St. Louis Cardinals this season. I remember when we played them the first week of August, swept them. They looked like a team that was completely done. And then they reel off 17 wins in a row. And, of course, they lose the wild card game, but they made it into that game. You didn't think that they'd even be close to that position in the first week of August. And you look at August and think that's late in the season, but that's how long a season is. That makes winning, that makes getting to the postseason, and certainly winning in the postseason, so much more rewarding to know that you've lasted that long, to know that you made it. We went from a season last year where there were 60 ball games to go from that to this, when you're kind of the mindset of it being a sprint last season. You go right back to the marathon this season. And it is a long year when you're not any good. But when you're good, it's so rewarding to make it through that grind and get into the postseason and know that you withstood all the challenges that come with 162 games.
Been only about a minute and a half left. When you look at this series and really kind of go back to the ALCS, everything seemed to change with that non-called third strike. The Astros bats come to life. They swing it like crazy to close out that series against Boston. You got Charlie Morton going in game 1. He's going back to his old stomping ground. Just kind of as you handicap it in a minute and a half, what do you think stands out? What's most important in this next potential 7 games?
Well, I feel like the Astros present a lot of the same problems that the Dodgers did from the standpoint of the depth of their lineup. They have a very good lineup. It's very deep. I don't think that the Astros have the pitching that the Dodgers had, especially in the bullpen. So I think this Braves team goes into it knowing that they've got the confidence that they can roll through whomever is on the mound, because they just did that with LA. I think this is a matchup of what the Braves pitchers do versus that Astro lineup. I feel like the Braves have the better rotation and better bullpen. And so long as they're getting out there and doing what they've been doing, I think they shut that down. I'm a big fan of pitching, and I think that good pitching beats good hitting. So if that's the case, to me, therein lies the series. I think defensively, the Braves have been as good as anybody in Major League Baseball this year. And I know that Houston has home field, but I really like the Braves' chances going into this thing. And I think the Braves pitching versus that Astros lineup is really going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, and you mentioned the atmosphere that you had in Atlanta on Saturday night. It'll be comparable in Houston for the first 2 games of the series. I don't know if it's roof open or roof closed. I would assume roof closed, because that is a tough place to play also.
Well, the cool thing is I've never worked in that ballpark, and I've never even witnessed a World Series game. So I'll be knocking out a couple of firsts tomorrow night.
That's really, really cool to be able to kind of make that a professional milestone, in addition to the Braves going after a title for the first time in the World Series since 1999. Man, safe travels. Absolutely great job all season long. Fantastic call on Saturday night for the World Series clincher. Wish you nothing but the best, my man.